Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. A warm welcome to all of you from around the world. Welcome to this webinar, From Space to Earth, Innovations Enabling Accessibility on Earth, organized by the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs. My name is Singi, and it is my pleasure to be the moderator today. To make this webinar more accessible and inclusive, we will be using self-description. I am an Asian woman with dark shoulder-length hair. I'm wearing glasses, a blouse, and a blazer. My pronoun is she, her. Before we begin, here are a few administrative announcements. First, to ensure the best viewing experience for everyone, please switch off your cameras and keep your microphones muted throughout the webinar. Second, please post your questions and comments in the chat. You may do this at any point during the webinar. My colleague Rodrigo will be moderating the chat. We will attempt to answer as many questions as possible during the Q&A session at the end of each presentation. Third, if you wish to use automated live captions, you may switch on this function by going to your meeting controls and select More, followed by Language and Speech, and click Turn on Live Captions. Fourth, this webinar is being recorded. The recording will be available on the UNOOSA YouTube channel after the event. Now, to formally kickstart our event, it is my pleasure to invite Mr. Luc Saint-Pierre, Chief of the Space Applications Section of UNOOSA, to deliver the opening remarks. Luc, over to you, please.
Thank you, Singhi. Good afternoon, everybody from Vienna. I am the Chief of the Space Applications Section of the Office for Outer Space Affairs in Vienna, and it is my honor to welcome you to this webinar, From Space to Earth, Innovations Enabling Accessibility on Earth. So as customary, I am a Caucasian male. I have too much gray hair and an attempt at a beard that is also way too gray. I am from Quebec in Canada, French speaking originally. Thank you. The original goals of the space sector that we see today concern dramatic milestones of exploration, sending human into orbit, developing space stations, sending rovers to Mars, etc. Even now, the development in the space sector, which make the news, tend to focus on these amazing victories of science and engineering. They are incredibly inspiring, but can seem abstracted from the daily life of most human on Earth. However, the knowledge derived from space exploration and development has effects which impact people every day. If you ever slept on a memory foam mattress or use a memory foam pillow, you use a material developed to cushion NASA astronauts. And I now understand why I pay so much for that pillow. If you have a modern smoke detector in your home, you're using a version of the device that was developed for spacecraft. If you ever used mobile navigation application in your car or on your phone, you've relied on connections of satellites in space. Space technology impact our daily lives in many crucial ways. Society would look, we think, drastically different had we not leaped to the stars and launched an era of space exploration. According to the World Health Organization, about 1.6 billion individuals experience significant disabilities. This means that for every 6 individuals, 1 may experience disability during their lifetime, with numbers increasing as lifespans, disease prevalence, and disaster occurrence increase. Disability, as you know, can take a variety of forms. It can be visible or hidden and can affect people at any point in their lives. Unfortunately, accessibility is not a given in today's world. People with disabilities often lack affordable, effective, and convenient resources to allow them to navigate a complicated world. Additionally, inventing new products in the accessibility sphere is difficult, which investors rarely support the development of accessible products, and they become as they have a relatively small consumer base and hence higher prices. One promising solution to this conundrum is to adapt existing technologies from other fields for accessibility purposes. The space sector is one particularly relevant field for that. For example, satellite telecommunication pathways enable communication through methods other than short-range audio and visual, thus presenting new opportunities for individuals who cannot rely on visual navigation. Next, because of the physical and mental strain which space travel places on astronauts, human spaceflight technologies have a range of medical applications to people with disabilities. Today in this webinar, you will hear from 4 researchers and entrepreneurs who have done exactly that. They converted space technologies to accessibility or healthcare tools which can help people daily on Earth. You'll learn about an application which uses satellite navigation to help blind individuals regain their independence. You'll learn about an exercise machine used by astronauts and amputees alike. You also learn about health monitoring system, which has been in space and sparked research into numerous health conditions. And you also learn about a spacesuit that can rehabilitate children with cerebral palsy. Most of all, you'll learn that space exploration provides benefits, which are concrete and can lead to a more equitable and accessible world. For those different presentations, I would like to express my gratitude to the 4 speakers who will share with us their space-based innovations. I'm also pleased to welcome the European Space Agency and the European Union Agency for Space Program for sharing their insights and highlighting opportunities in space for global health. I would like also to thank you, all of you in the audience, for taking the time to attend and learn more about the current state of accessibility and healthcare spin-offs from space sector. It is inspiring to see so many of you recognize the value of space technologies for advancing global health, acknowledging the progress in the field and discussing future directions the field can take. I also would like to thank my colleagues Singyi Ang and Rodrigo, who are organizing and helping with this unique webinar. The United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs is committed to advancing disability inclusion and stands ready to partner with you to implement the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you very much, and I hope you'll enjoy and benefit from this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Luke, for framing today's conversation and for highlighting the importance of inclusiveness, which is a key value to the United Nations. So now, without further ado, let's move on to the next section of our webinar. So let us welcome Thomas Krohn from the European Space Agency to give an overview of the space for global health market and emerging trends. Thomas is a business analyst for the ESA Commercialization Gateway. He focuses on market analysis and outreach activities regarding commercial space applications for space and non-space sectors. Thomas, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much for that introduction. So hi, everyone. My name is Thomas Krohn. Yeah, I work as a business analyst. So perhaps just to self-describe me. So I am a Caucasian male from the Netherlands originally. And today I'm wearing a white shirt and my pronouns are he and him. Furthermore, to what I do at ESA is I work within the commercialization gateway team. Perhaps to start off to describe a little bit what we do in this team. So we are a fairly new team, set up like 2 to 3 years ago, and we support really market intelligence activities for our internal stakeholders. So on one side those are programs developing activities for industry, but also directly towards industry. So we publish some of our findings as well, which I will also share later with you. Quickly just on the commercialization gateway. So we do market intelligence for programs, and then the idea is that we do that through very targeted actions for raising awareness. So how we can use space infrastructure and data applications for services for in space and on Earth. And by that, those kind of actions, we really try to encourage newcomers to find a path to ESA and different programmatic opportunities, and essentially trying to create links between new emerging business sectors and ESA's capabilities. So yeah, today I'm going to talk a bit on health, but yeah, we also do different, we also look at different sectors. So these are some examples of those sectors that we have also researched, where we also try to look at synergies between these kind of sectors and the capabilities that space can provide. So a little bit on the global health trends. So what we see from when we research the market on health, we see that the majority of disabilities are very strongly connected with NCDs, so non-communicable diseases, and that's also in general causing the majority of all major deaths, and that is mainly driven by increasing aging population and chronic health diseases, of which cardiovascular is the biggest killer, and also through lifestyle-related activities. So your inactivity, using alcohol, unhealthy diets are also really driving these chronic health diseases. Interestingly, also part of those diseases are triggered by environmental factors, so like air quality and the water quality as well, which is also very interesting when we think about satellites and Earth observation data. And when we look at disabilities, we see that 1.3 billion people are globally experiencing significant disability. NCDs is a major underlying factor of these health conditions, and the majority are living in low and middle income countries. However, the prevalence is the highest in the high income countries. That's also making connection with people with disabilities having double the risk of developing conditions and generally have a shorter life expectancy than people with no disabilities. And that's also increasing the health inequality, and which is mainly driven also due to restricted accessibility of healthcare for people with disabilities, but also driven by external and environmental factors such as socioeconomic and political conditions. So when we look in terms of developments and needs, so these developments are also putting in rising demand on healthcare systems across Europe, especially, but also more across the world to be more inclusive. And in addition to these environmental factors, we're also seeing an increase of health emergencies related to disease outbreaks, such as COVID, vector and waterborne diseases, but also through climate change, natural disasters, and conflicts as well, which are affecting healthcare provision around the world. And that's then also having an effect on access to timely medical services, which is particularly existing for people with disabilities. So on the bottom right, you can also see a graph which we taken from a report where we look at Europe and different disabilities and what the challenges lie in timely access per country, but also per disability. And we can see that there are quite some challenges with timely access to healthcare. So that also means that there's a shift needed for care to be more integrated, so that healthcare systems can become more resilient and also more accessible. And this is also a little bit when we look at the digitalization of the sector and how this P4 revolution is driving this. So we're seeing that healthcare is becoming more predictive, more preventative, participatory, and also more personalized. And a lot of these factors are driven on technologies such as connectivity, data platforms, enhanced user experiences, but also accessibility is a major success factor. Some other enabling technologies are sensors, applications, wearables, mobile devices, robotics, but also in terms of connectivity, 5G and 6G, which can enhance the capacity for enabling such services. And that is those kind of developments are enabling healthcare providers to embrace more digital technologies and moving and being able to move more towards outpatient care. A big driver of that has been COVID-19 for digitalization, and that has really lessons learned, some lessons have really been taken from there in terms of delivering healthcare also in new formats, and especially digital formats is something that is for the space industry is a very interesting trend that we think is highly relevant for where we can provide an added value. And this is just another graph on how we're seeing emerging of different platforms on different kind of levels. So we're seeing the number of connected participants and then also the level of integration of the different platforms. And the higher the integration, the more there's opportunity for big data and data fusion technologies to come together and enable new kind of applications and health services. And that also really helps in terms of providing more accessibility of healthcare to people with disabilities. In terms of investments, globally, we are seeing also an increase in global healthcare spending between 2000 and 2020. Also, when we look at especially digital companies, especially during COVID, they have captivated quite some venture capital funding. As I said, COVID has been a major driver from that, and especially in the area of telemedicine, as we can see in the graph, they have gotten a lot of private investment as well, which also shows that there is a bit more of a commercial market as well. Investors are also interested in digital technologies. In terms of health and space, so in our research, we looked at three kind of domains. So we looked at medical and biomedical research in the space environment. So we see there that there's a lot of added value where space can provide in drug design and development, disease modeling, for example, for developing organoids, or we can also look at space medicine and life sciences in developing countermeasures for osteoporosis, which is very prevalent for research when astronauts go into space. When we look at telemedicine and digital health, we see a lot of interest and potential for real-time monitoring being enabled by satellite communications, and also remote diagnostics through consultations, which are enabling patients to engage with doctors in the remote areas and regions. In terms of public health management, this is where Earth observation we see is a real key data source, which can really support in monitoring pollution levels for respiratory and broader health risk related to air quality and water quality. And in general, it can enable early warning systems, support epidemiologies, disease surveillance, and also map climate change and how that affects also the population, the health population. And also in terms of navigation technologies, it can really support to improve the visibility across the supply chain. So and support real-time tracking capabilities for drone service deliveries and so forth. So these are a little bit what we did in our market report. We also now have a call which is opened, focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and this is very much focused on aging populations and also and being more inclusive towards people with disabilities. It's a call that is a 6-month kickstart study, so it's a feasibility study which runs for 6 months, which ESA will provide 75% of the funding for a maximum of 60K. And of course, the rate 25K will be borne by the bidder. The opening date is on the 20th November 2023, and the closing date will be on the 26th. One condition of this call as well is that the teams must be based in one of ESA's member states. So as you can see on the flags on the bottom, these are our member states that the call is open to. I will share these slides afterwards, so I've embedded these links as well, so you can find also more information about the call through the links as well provided in the deck. To conclude, so some of the information that we provide on the market is also, we've also expanded that in a public document, which you can find also through this first link. And of course, we also, as I mentioned, we also do it for different reports as well. So you can also find there different reports that we have done also on space for green finance and other sectors. We also organized a workshop back in April, which was on health and biotech, bringing the health community and space technologies together. And this is in this link you can also find some the summary of that event and some of the key findings and takeaways from it. Finally, we are quite active on LinkedIn on our socials, so we have a health and biotech community LinkedIn group. So here also feel free to join. It's a community that was born after we did the health and biotech event. And yeah, it's free and open to join for everyone. And yeah, we usually share some space and health related information on the platform, but also feel free to we would also encourage you and to share as much as you wish also with us. And finally, our LinkedIn page as well. If you're interested in ESA and commercialization activities, you can also find more information where we post a lot of our activities on this general page. And that is the conclusion. And yeah, thank you very much. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to hear them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thomas, for setting the global overview for today's discussion about space for health, in particular for disability inclusion. And if any members of the audience are interested in the Kickstart opportunity, do check out the ESA commercialization website, which will be shown on the chat later on. So let us now move on to the next segment of the webinar, the innovation showcases. So today we are delighted to have 4 innovators from different fields to share with us the unique value proposition of their innovations and to show us how satellite navigation and technologies from human spaceflight is an indispensable part of their innovation. And our first speaker here today is Pierre-Alexandre Fournier, CEO of Hexoskin. So in 2018, Hexoskin was launched in a remote health monitoring system for astronauts doing research aboard the International Space Station. And today, Hexoskin products are used by research organizations all around the world to collect medical data and improve medical knowledge in real-life settings. So Pierre, over to you to tell us more about Hexoskin and Astroskin. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So hi everyone, my name is Pierre-Alexandre Fournier. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Hexoskin. Hexoskin is based in Montreal, Canada, and develops wearable health sensors and software for medical research. First of all, thanks to the United Nations for inviting me to speak about the work we do to support medical research in space. Our team at Hexoskin has been involved with space medicine since 2011, first with the Canadian Space Agency, then NASA, and dozens of other organizations around the world. Today, I'm going to speak briefly about the history of human spaceflight, its challenges, the research being done to improve safety and accessibility of space, and the impact of that work on medical research on Earth. I only have 10 minutes and there's a lot to cover, so I'll do my best. So we've been going to space for a little bit more than 60 years, but there's still very few people who have been in space. So only about 600 astronauts have reached orbit in the past 60 years, but less than 100 women. And most of these people were very healthy. They were selected to have very few or no health problems. With space more accessible than ever today, we expect thousands of people to visit space in the coming decades on suborbital and orbital flights. And many of these new astronauts will visit space to work, or as travelers, will have health conditions or disabilities. And the space environment is an extreme environment for the human body and mind. It's an environment where you're isolated and confined. The spacecrafts are quite small. Even the International Space Station, which is the largest structure we've built in space, is the size of let's say you could put a few buses together and connect them, and then people go there and live for 6 months at a time without leaving it. And in addition to weightlessness and radiation, you have no day and night when you're in orbit because you go around the planet every 90 minutes. So there's a lot of physiological systems that are confused about what's going on, and this is having an extreme effect on human health. We're doing research in space and on Earth to simulate these environments. So at the bottom of the screen, you see analog missions that NASA and other space agencies are doing to simulate space environments and better prepare people for long-term space missions. Everyone who spent more than a few days in space experience health issues. Very commonly, astronauts talk about back pain, upper respiratory congestion, and about half of the crew members report an event that they judge that is important. Right now, most of the traveling we do is in low Earth orbit, so we can do telemedicine. There's very little delay between the International Space Station and Earth. And there's always an option to send back an astronaut to Earth if there's an emergency. But when we're going to be going to the Moon and Mars, telemedicine will be harder or impossible, and it will not be possible to send the astronaut back to Earth. So there's a lot of research that is being done today to improve the safety of these astronauts and create better mitigation strategies and risk mitigation strategies. So among these strategies that we call countermeasures, there's a lot of training. Astronauts typically spend over 2 hours training every day during their space mission. And we've done a lot over the past 20 years to reduce the impact of long-term space mission on the human body. But we still see astronauts coming back and need weeks to readapt to gravity, and many astronauts are feeling long-term effects of their missions, especially on the vision system, bone and muscle mass that they need to maintain. So how do we do medical research in space? Well, one of the constraints is that astronaut time is very valuable, and we have so many questions to answer. We need to find ways to be more efficient in collecting data from astronauts in a way that doesn't interfere with all the scientific experiments that they're doing during their missions. So astronauts can run hundreds of scientific experiments during a 6-month mission, and we don't want medical research to be in the way of that, or as little as possible. So our contribution to that was to design the AstroSkin wearable vital signs monitoring platform. It's designed to be a full vital signs monitoring platform, monitoring cardiac activity with a 3-lead ECG, breathing activity, and it's more than breathing rate that we measure. We measure breathing pattern, thoracic and abdominal breathing, and other vital signs, pulse oximetry, PPG, systolic blood pressure. We measure blood pressure continuously with that product, and an accelerometer and skin temperature. So that gives you a holistic view of what's happening with the physiology and the vital organs of the astronauts. And you can continuously record for many days during space mission. And we're building a unique data set of vital signs using that platform with astronauts in space. Of course, the wearable sensors are connected with a mobile platform, and we have different tools to analyze this data that are available. And the sensors have been used so far by at least 14 astronauts. And it's an international collaboration effort. The system was installed in in January 2019 by Canadian astronaut David Saint-Jacques on the upper left on this slide, but it has been used by European astronauts, American astronauts, and astronauts from Japan and the Middle East and other places. So it's an international effort. Everybody is contributing to it. I'm going to give you a few examples of the research that's being done. There's 4 clinical research projects ongoing in the space station. One of them is looking at the cardiovascular system and how it's affected by microgravity. And it's a good rule of thumb to compare in general 6 months in space to about 10 years of aging on Earth when we talk about the cardiovascular system or bone loss or muscle loss and other effects. So it's again very hard on the human body. Another study is looking at the link between cardiovascular effects of space travel and respiratory system. This one is led by Dr. Andrew Blabber from Simon Fraser University in Canada. And another one is looking at deconditioning during space flight. So when you arrive in space and you experience microgravity, your body adapts to it. And when you come back on Earth, your body has to readapt to gravity. So there's a lot of things that are going on, and we're doing work to, we're supporting work to better understand these effects. So our work in the International Space Station was recognized last year by an award from the American Astronautical Society. And last week, we're very excited because we've done the first suborbital flight with Astroskin. And we're very excited by suborbital flights because most of the people who are going to go into space in the next 20 years are going to do so on a suborbital flight, which is a very short space flight where astronauts can experience 3, 4, 5 minutes of microgravity. And now that we've done that space flight with the Astroskin, sorry for the jargon, but it has reached the TRL9, which means that we've demonstrated that it can be used on a suborbital flight. And we hope to collect more data about the adaptation of the human body to a space launch where you can experience forces up to 3G, so 3 times the gravity on Earth, and then the adaptation to microgravity, and then the adaptation back to gravity during that 90-minute, more or less, space flight. So very excited by that, and there's going to be more research being done on that. So of course, to prepare long-term missions, a lot more research is needed. There's a lot of opportunity to work on these. Now the ISS is well equipped with medical devices, not just the Astroskin, but many other platforms to collect samples and to take measurements on astronauts. We'll see more private missions and suborbital flights, where we're going to have a lot of opportunities to enroll astronauts in new research projects, and astronauts that are going to be more diverse and less fit than the astronauts that we've traditionally recruited for these missions. So lots of opportunity to improve the understanding of human health and how we can make space more accessible to a more diverse set of astronauts. So we're collaborating with many organizations on this work. So this is a sample, but I'd like to point out that the products we're developing, the Astroskin and Exoskin sensors, they're a lot more than a platform for astronauts and airplane pilots. The scientific community that use the platform today is doing research on aging, on cardiovascular diseases, respiratory diseases, infectious diseases, mental health, rare diseases and pediatric research, epilepsy, long COVID, and many other health conditions. And the international scientific community using our wearable sensors has already published hundreds of peer-reviewed publications. And we hope that many of you will join us in pushing the boundaries of medical knowledge in space and on Earth. Thank you.
Thank you, Pierre, for the very interesting presentation. Our chat room is just warming up. I'm starting to receive questions from the audience. So let me read the first question to you. All right. So the question is about the Astro Skin customization. So the question is, can the Astro Skin system be adapted to different body shapes and types, especially considering that some types of disability will affect the body shape and size?
Yes, so this is something we've studied extensively. We've been working with children with disease, with older people with all kind of health conditions, and yes, so we have different sizes of garments that fit different sizes of people, and there are ways to adjust these garments so that they can fit people with very different body shapes. So we've been doing a lot of work studying that. Thank you.
Okay, I guess this is like another shirt, right? So you have like small, medium, and large in different sizes.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, the next question is about microgravity effects. So how do the forces experienced during launch and or microgravity affect the functioning of the various sensors in the Astro Skin? What adaptation was needed to make it space ready?
Okay, so the work to make this technology space ready, from the time we had developed the product to the time it reached the space station, it's a project that lasted over 2 years, and it involves a lot of design changes to adapt to things like vibration and microgravity. One of the things that is specific to electronic systems in space is that because you don't have gravity, you don't have convection movement in the air. So you need to have strategies to evacuate heat from systems that you don't need in an environment where you have gravity. So that involved testing in facilities, and we've worked with the Canadian Space Agency, NASA, and other partners on that to make sure that the system was qualified for space and was safe to use in the International Space Station.
All right, thank you. And the last question is really about the application on Earth. So you have spoken a lot about how astroskin is being used for medical research on board the ISS. So could you tell us a bit more about how the exoskin is being used on Earth?
Yeah, so I mean, there are hundreds of projects using these sensors today. A few things I'm really excited about is people doing research on continuous blood pressure measurement, because this is something that has not been well studied in real life settings, and the astroskin allow researchers to record these vital signs in more real life environments. Another area that I'm very excited about is all the work we're doing on respiratory monitoring. There's a lot of products to do continuous cardiac monitoring today, but very few products that can do continuous breathing patterns monitoring. So, and there's a lot of things to be done for respiratory diseases. And maybe a last one is that I'm really interested in is all the work we're doing in pediatric research with kids with rare diseases. When we talk about rare diseases, there's the word rare, but there's about 4,000 rare diseases that have been identified, and there are millions and millions of people who are looking for better diagnosis and therapies, and there's just so much work to be done. So, and I encourage people to look at this for careers in the scientific community.
Right. All right. Thank you so much, Pierre. Thank you so much for your time. It's been wonderful listening to astroskin and
pleasure.
exoskin, and I really hope that you'll be able to achieve whatever you have set out for both of these products. They're really wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right. So now moving from monitoring and diagnostic applications, let us now learn more about how exercise countermeasures in space can be used for rehabilitation and muscle strengthening on Earth. So our next speaker is John Kennett, CEO of Physical Mind London. He is the inventor of the multi-exercise countermeasure for space exploration and clinical terrestrial use, called Hi5M, the high frequency impulse for microgravity. John, I'm very excited to see what you have for us. Over to you, please.
Well, hello there. Hi, I'm John Kennett. I'm the CEO of Physical Mind London, and we develop astronaut exercise equipment that also benefits astronauts and para-astronauts in space, but also Earthlings down here on terra firma. It's a real privilege and honour to be asked by United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs to come and talk today. And in the spirit of description, I am a white male. I have short grey hair. I'm sporting a beard, which is turning more white than grey. I'm wearing a black crew jacket, and on my right shoulder is our mission badge, which is an astronaut wearing a spacesuit jumping in space with stars around. That was designed by a schoolgirl called Jessica, aged 8, from a national schools competition we had here at the UK. So I'm going to be talking today about our current exercise countermeasures that are on the space station and why we need them. What are the challenges coming up for the next generation of exercise equipment? I'm going to introduce our exercise equipment called Hi5M, and also how that translates from space down here to Earth. Now, we heard earlier from Pierre Alexandria about some of the deconditioning that takes place in space, and being in space in microgravity really has detrimental effects onto the body. When we're outside of that 1G Earth's environment, so much happens and our body starts to adapt. We start losing bone mineral density. Our aerobic capacity starts to reduce. Our muscle mass decreases. And along with that, our muscle strength also decreases. We also heard about other situations that arises. Our spines can elongate by quite a bit. We also get a fluid shift in our bodies because we no longer have that gravity pulling down throughout our time here on Earth. So we tend to get fluid shifts as that fluid moves up into the head. Now, to counteract that, on board the International Space Station, they have 3 main exercise devices. They have a treadmill, they have a cycle machine, and pretty much a multi-gym called ARED. Now, the reason they need all of these elements is, as mentioned before, the astronauts have to exercise for up to 2 to 2.5 hours a day, 6 days a week. And this is to try and get back some of that resistance and force going through the musculoskeletal system, and to also challenge the cardiovascular system. This is a huge debt to pay for the time being up in space. We want to really work those muscles, because when you see pictures like this, we realize that there's no force really acting on the astronauts when they're in space. They're not getting that force that we have when we're jumping up and down. There's always gravity there to pull us back down, and we have to push away from it somehow. But that's not the case up in space. There's a lot of challenges for us who are creating the next generation of exercise countermeasures. Well, we're going to go to the moon. We're looking for lunar habitats. We're also looking for Gateway, which is a space station that's going to orbit around the moon. Now, the size of Gateway is going to be much, much smaller than the current International Space Station. And with that comes its own challenges. And those challenges are the fact that anyone creating exercise countermeasures has got to create it in such a small volume that it's got to fit inside something the size of Gateway. And that means we can't take on board 3 large pieces of equipment that are currently in use on the International Space Station. It's also got to be multi-exercise capable. It's got to be quick to set up. It's got to be quick to de-rig and move on for the rest of our working time on board Gateway, or the same on a lunar habitat. We've got to condense those exercise programs down to the bare minimum to give a maximum output. Now, the other interesting part with all of this, it's not just as simple as putting a piece of equipment onto a space station. It's got to be able to shield that space station from the vibration and forces created and generated when we're exercising. So if there's some very delicate experiments taking place on board that space station, we can't have a cycle machine or a treadmill that's bouncing around and creating issues. This is where Hi-Fi-M comes in, high frequency impulse for microgravity. And astonishingly, we're able to jump in microgravity, in zero gravity. And this puts great load through the musculoskeletal system, but also challenges the cardiovascular system. It's not just jumping. Hi-Fi-M has over 70 exercises that we can utilize in a whole program response. And that's exercising as well as rehabilitation. We're not reinventing the exercise wheel with this. A lot of exercises you'll be very familiar with. But the uniqueness of Hi-Fi-M is that we are able to actually shield the space station or spacecraft from the load and the forces that are being transmitted down from the exerciser through to that space station and spacecraft. And this is absolutely important. And getting that multitude of exercise is exactly what's needed to keep a healthy body, to strengthen those bones, strengthen those muscles, and also get that cardiovascular system really challenged and working well. So the uniqueness of Hi-Fi-M is the fact that it isolates its own load and vibration by having two platforms, an upper and lower carriage, that are connected and slide simultaneously but in opposite directions. We make sure that the upper carriage with the user on it balances the same weight as the lower carriage. So if you imagine the user lying down with their shoulders on the shoulder pads that we're seeing and their feet on that jump board, when they're jumping, as they push away, we have high tensile springs connected to both upper and lower carriage, and they form the resistance. It's very simple. There's no vacuum cylinders here to fail. There's no electronic equipment that's going to cause any issues. It's very, very simplistic mechanics. And with that upper and lower mass equaling one another, technically they should nullify the load and the forces of those two carriages coming together. Now, the European Space Agency has carried out bed rest study utilizing jumping as a form of countermeasure. Now, a bed rest study is where people volunteer to lie in bed for up to 60 days. For some people, that sounds absolutely fantastic. It's not only lying in bed for 60 days, they have their head tilted down at a 6-degree angle, which is quite extraordinary. And that simulates the fluid shift that one would get exposed to when in microgravity. So for 60 days, there was two groups, a group that were jumping with 4 to 6 minutes of jumps each day, and a control group that was not training at all. So on this graph that we've got in front of us, to see the lower left chart that we have there, it's showing a black line. And that black line is the group that were jumping 4 to 6 minutes a day. The dashed line is the control group. And what it's showing us there is at the end of the bed rest study and 14 days afterwards, when they measured the bone mineral density of the jumping group, it would seem to actually have increased from when they started. In the control group, they lost a lot of bone mineral density. The chart to the right of that, it's describing to us the force through the muscles and muscle extension. And for the group that were jumping, they pretty much maintain muscle strength throughout. But the control group that didn't exercise lost an awful lot of muscle. So where does Hi-Fi-M take us? Well, we have to test Hi-Fi-M, and to test that, we're going to take it into zero gravity. And we've also brought along our own para-astronaut analog tester, an amputee. And we carried out feasibility studies here on Earth, first of all. And then what we have to do is we have to actually put Hi-Fi-M and attach it inside of an aircraft. And this is an Airbus A310. We've bolted Hi-Fi-M to the seat rails where your normal passenger seats would be. And then the aircraft performs a whole series of parabolas. And the aircraft climbs up to an angle of about 50 degrees nose up. And then we're injected into zero gravity for 22 seconds. And here is our para-astronaut. He's in zero gravity right at this moment, and he's jumping perfectly as he jumps on the ground in zero gravity. He also got the opportunity to float around in the floating area as well. But back to work. What's extraordinary about this is the world's first of having a para-astronaut testing exercise countermeasures in zero gravity. But where does that take us? Where does that take amputees down here on Earth and terrestrially? What can we do for them? And this is where it's really exciting, because Hi-Fi-M is specifically for male, female, and disabled people going into space. But also here on Earth, we're able to work with amputees under a feasibility study and look at the areas that really start affecting them. Now, we know that Hi-Fi-M and jumping is very good for mitigating the effects of deconditioning whilst in zero gravity. So that low bone density, the muscle mass that can be lost, as well as muscle strength. Now, for an amputee, they tend to have localized area of low bone density and also reduce muscle mass around that area. And what we can do with Hi-Fi-M, we can administer a dosage of exercise to specifically and gradually build up that load and improve that bone density through that stump and through that hip joint of the area that's affected. We can also build up their muscle mass, but also importantly, we can condition and help condition the stump, that junction where the stump and the prosthetic meet one another. And instead of someone working vertically in 1G, putting load, by putting them horizontally, we can then gradually increase that load and that force going through them. And as you can see, the individual jumping here, which is quite extraordinary, something he never thought he would be capable of doing since 7 years since he lost his leg. Now, earlier on, Thomas mentioned about osteoporosis. Now, we know osteoporosis really affects astronauts when they're on long duration space missions. But down here on Earth, osteoporosis is a very serious condition, and there are millions and millions of people that are experiencing osteoporosis, and it has a massive effect on their lives, but also a huge effect on a nation's healthcare system. And what we find is we have that ability to utilize Hi-Fi-M by taking a version of it into hospital in clinical use only. We could wheel it up to the side of a bed and actually put the patient onto Hi-Fi-M and safely administer a very gentle dosage of exercise where they are having to work, but we're supporting their bodies. And it helps build their bone mineral density. And you don't need a great increase in bone mineral density to massively reduce their fracture risk. Also, by increasing the muscle mass, this increases their stability, their ability for locomotion, and also reduces their fall risk. It also reduces hospital admissions, which is a really important element because it gives their life back. It also enables that they're able to be a little bit more independent and mobile. And this really is where it's all at. We're looking to help individuals here terrestrially with their health, their well-being, and also their independence. And this also includes pediatric care as well, where we've been asked, can we do such a thing with children that have been very sick and bedbound for quite a long time? And that's an area we hadn't thought of, but we're working on that right now. So we're looking to improve the quality of life. We want people to stay active longer. And also we want to free up the healthcare services and their staff. And we believe Hi-Fi-M in a clinical version is definitely on the right track for doing this. Physical Mind London is based here in London, United Kingdom, and we've been greatly supported by the UK Space Agency and the European Space Agency for our parabolic flight campaigns. Also, Physical Mind is currently part of a bilateral agreement between the UK and Canada, and we're working very closely with the Canadian Space Agency on their programs there with Hi-Fi-M, and this is very exciting for us. So I'm going to wrap up this talk with hopefully with some questions if you have any, but here's the email address if you wish to get in contact, along with Physical Mind London's website. And with that, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, John, for the presentation. It is really exciting to see how Hi-Fi-M can help amputees and paraastronauts, as well as people with osteoporosis. So we have 3 questions here from the audience. The first one is regarding how quickly can astronauts assemble and disassemble Hi-Fi-M?
That's a great question. When we have been on the parabolic flight campaign, that's exactly what the information we had to give. And to set that up, it was 1 minute, 30 seconds. Very swift, and the same for de-rigging as well. Of course, when transferring from one astronaut to the other, there is a slight reconfiguration, but it really doesn't take that much time at all.
Great. All right. And the next question is about the body weight. So are all the exercises that Hi-5M facilitate body weight based, or does the machine allow weight to be added to exercises as well?
Yes, body weight actually doesn't come into affecting how the exercise is actually carried out. What we do with an individual's body mass is we need to know it so that we can then counterbalance that weight on the lower carriage. So the individual lies down or sits down on the upper surface of Hi-5M, and we have this countermass underneath. The resistance is actually created by springs. So that spring resistance means that we can load it up and someone can really work incredibly hard and really exhaust themselves and exhaust their muscles, or we can be very aerobic in the exercise as well. But the other part to this is how an individual lands. One can land if one's jumping with quite stiff legs, and that really increases the ground reaction force. And we've managed to replicate up to 6 times one's own body weight through ground reaction force with landing with stiffer legs. But also if you land and absorb the shock of landing with bent knees, bent hips and bent ankles, you're landing and absorbing that, but still doing a huge amount of work through the muscles, which the muscles themselves are then causing the bones to flex and twist, and also cause bone mineral density to improve as well.
Okay, and I think with that, you have also answered the third question, where our audience was asking how can jumping per se help with improving bone density. All right, so thank you so much, John. I think it's really exciting to, at least for me, to hear something that is about horizontal jumping rather than vertical jumping. So that for me was really like the innovative shift in mindset. You know, it's like the out of the box approach to jumping, and I found that really interesting. So thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so keeping with the topic of the effects of microgravity, let us welcome our next speaker, Elena Tomilowska, Head of the Department of Sensory Motor Physiology and Countermeasures at the Institute of Biomedical Problems of the Russian Academy of Sciences. So under her leadership, the laboratory performs regular studies under the conditions of real and simulated microgravity of the effects of weightlessness on all parts of the motor control system. She's also the organizer of complex experiments, such as the dry immersion experiment, dedicated to the investigation of the effects of microgravity on different body systems. So today, Elena will present the Regent suit, which was adapted from the penguin suit worn by cosmonauts to prevent muscular atrophy. So Elena, over to you, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting me. For those who cannot see me, I'm a middle-aged European woman with long brown hairs and tired face, wearing green dress and white jacket. So today I will tell you about the successful examples of implementation of space countermeasure technologies in Earth medicine. As you know, the piloted manned space flights started in 1960 with a very short duration, space flight of 108 minutes only. And after that, the duration of space flight started to increase. However, when we reached the duration of 17 days and 17 hours, The cosmonauts came back to the Earth in a very bad state of health, and they needed hospitalization. So it was absolutely clear that it is necessary to develop the special system of countermeasure against the negative effects of spaceflight factors. And from that date, within 1 year, this development was done. And after that, it was tested in some future flights, and it showed its efficacy. And now you can see that we had a lot of very long duration flights, up to 1 year, and even one flight which was with duration of 438 days. And the countermeasure system works very well. The main problem in the space flight is unloading of the body of the cosmonaut. And certainly all the countermeasure systems are aimed to compensate this unloading. And first of all, certainly it was developed the active program of physical training. This is treadmill training, locomotor training. This is bicycle ergometer. This is resistive exercises. And also there was developed a big range of passive means. When we say passive means, that means that the cosmonauts can train using these means with, together with their operator activity. So you don't need to have many time, to spend many time for this training, and you just use these countermeasure means during your regular work. And here you can see the list of these passive means which are used right now on the space station. This is electromyostimulation, axial loading suit, occlusive cuffs, expanders, low body negative pressure suit, Chibis, anti-G suit, Centaur, which is used usually on the landing, in the landing process, and also water salt additives. Some of these passive means were implemented in the earth medicine, and now I will tell you, I will show you some examples of this implementation. The first of all, I will tell you about the axial loading suit Penguin. It was invented in 70s. Actually it consists of the system of rubber bungees which can be tensed according to the loading of different muscle groups of the body. And you can change the loading asymmetrically. For example, you can load more the left leg or the right leg or the back muscles for different aims. And certainly for the cosmonauts, these suits are developing individually. Each cosmonaut has its own penguin suit, and to implement something like this into clinic, certainly we had to change the construction to provide the possibility for medical staff to use the suit for different patients. And this modification you can see here, this is a rehabilitation suit Regent, and it is very widely used right now in the earth rehabilitation. You can see that it consists of different elements, and all the rubber bandages are outside the suit because it is much more comfortable to work for the medical staff if all the elements are outside and they can change their loads manually very easily. This suit showed its efficacy in correction of functional disorders of posture and locomotions, in improving the quality of life, in increase the tolerance to physical loads, and increase of social.
Elena, I think you muted yourself accidentally.
Okay, now you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Here you can see some examples of the studies which we had with this suit in recovery after stroke. We used this suit for 2 weeks after stroke, and you can see that the training in this suit can improve and increase the brain plasticity and the recovery of brain connections which are needed to rehabilitate the right movements, right posture, and right correct locomotions. You also can see that we use this suit in more than 300.5 institutions who are working with the rehabilitation process. It is also shown that this suit is very good for cerebral palsy, for children's cerebral palsy, because for rehabilitation of this nosology, it is extremely important to create the correct postural synergy. And this suit provides such possibilities to correct, to create the right posture, and after that the movement rehabilitation goes much better and more successful. Okay. Here you can see also the other example of clinical trial results for more than 300 patients who improved their walking category using this suit. Very nice. And also the use of this suit can help to increase the motor activity of the speech apparatus, because the centers in the brain which are responsible for the locomotions are very close to the centers which are responsible for our speech. And so if you increase the neuroplasticity in these closed zones, then you improve the whole regions. This suit also can be easily compatible with other neurorehabilitation technologies, such as virtual reality, such as balance therapy, or locomotor training with suspension, for example. Okay. The other mean which I wanted to show you is a compensator of support unloading. This is also called like as space boots, and this is their special boots with their soles inbuilt, and in the soles there are some rubber cameras which are filled by the air which goes from the air compressor. And this is a stimulation of the sole support zones. When we are walking, we are pressing to these sole support zones actively, like from heel to dorsal areas of one leg and the other one. And we made the artificial stimulator which pressing on our support zones in the same locomotor regimen. And after that, even before sending it to the International Space Station, we implemented this technology to the clinics, and it showed that it is really effective for cerebral palsy, for all the stages of rehabilitation after stroke, including the acute period when the patient cannot move and cannot stand and cannot walk. In spinal pathologies, in prolonged immobilization of patients of various nosological profiles, and in fractures of the bones of the lower extremities. So this stimulator makes non-invasive activation of areas of cerebral cortex responsible for locomotion. So we had a special study with fMRI when we scanned the brain of the patients during the work of this stimulator, and we saw the activation of the locomotor zones of the brain. It also helped to normalization of muscle tone in the lower extremities. Indirectly, it can prevent venous insufficiency and activate bone consolidation mechanisms after different traumas. And the other mean is not actually space countermeasurement, but this was developed for the space flight. This is ground-based microgravity model, dry immersion. This is a bath filled with warm water and covered by the big rubber foam with a very big area. So the person is immersed in the water, not contacting with the water. And we developed this model for deconditioning of human organism to get the negative effects of supportlessness, of motor inactivity, and so on. But it turned out that this mean can be used for positive effects if we use the short duration of exposure. And now we have the this dry immersion baths for motor rehabilitation. We showed that it can be used very effectively for spastic forms of cerebral palsy in patients with Parkinson's disease, in perinatal hypoxic central nervous system lesions in children, for somatoform dysfunction of the autonomic nervous system, in taking out edemas when we have kidney pathology or cardiovascular diseases, and also for chronic fatigue syndrome and sleep disorders. The main effects of this model is relief of spasticity, unloading of the musculoskeletal system, reduction of chronic pain syndrome, increase of immunity, and reduction of edematous syndrome. And as you can see in weightlessness, we have the main factors which we also have now on Earth: hypodynamia, hyperkinesia, and sensory deprivation. That's why we can implement our countermeasurements to the clinic on Earth in different categories of patients, and even elder people and the people who work in office, for example, and also suffer from hypodynamia and hyperkinesia. So the last one which I want to show you that our current work is the work on electromyostimulation, and we are trying to develop the electromyostimulator, very simple, but basing on the regimens which we use on the International Space Station, because we know that for training of muscle endurance or muscle strength, we need to use different regimens of electromyostimulation. That's why we want to develop something new, the new device which will combine all of these approaches. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Elena, for the detailed presentation. In the interest of time, we will skip the verbal Q&A session, but we will appreciate if you type your reply to the questions in the chat. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so now let's explore the use of another space technology, which is satellite navigation. So most, if not all of us, have had the experience of looking at a map on our mobile phones to navigate our way to a location. Our next speaker, Hugo Furtado, will show us how we can rely on our sense of hearing instead. So Hugo is the CEO of Dreamwaves. He holds a PhD in augmented reality in surgery and has a background in engineering, virtual reality, and augmented reality. So Hugo, over to you, please, to show us how we can see the world through our ears.
Thank you so much. Let me just share my screen. Perfect. Thank you very much. So, hi everyone. My name is Hugo. I'm a white male with black long hair and long beard. I'm wearing a black shirt, and I come from Portugal. So I'm the CEO and founder of Dreamwaves, where we want you to see the world through your ears. And I'm going to show you what that means exactly. So orientation has always been a fundamental challenge for everyone. I still remember the days where I used to ask for directions to someone on the street, but now with a smartphone, suddenly it became much easier to go everywhere. But it is not easy for everyone. For a blind person, going independently somewhere with a smartphone can be a huge challenge. And that challenge means that blind and visually impaired people have high difficulties even leaving the house on their own. And the fact that people don't leave their homes leads to physical problems simply from the lack of motion, of movement, mental health problems because people feel isolated and feel dependent, and eventually leads to unemployment. Just to give an idea, in the EU alone, over 75% of blind people in the age of employment are unemployed. So this is a huge social and societal problem. Our mission at Dreamwaves is to make navigation for blind and for everyone very easy. So we have created Wave Out, which is an app that you can use to go anywhere simply by listening and following sounds. And how does that work? So just like any other navigation app, our app calculates a route to the destination. And then we use augmented reality to place virtual waypoints along the route in the real world. And we use spatial audio with headphones to hear where the waypoints are. So if you would be on the street now, in the scene that you have on the screen, you would hear a music coming from in front of you. And because it's augmented reality, you could move around and turn, and the music would always be at that point across the street. So you know where the music is, you can just turn and walk to that location. Once you cross the street and get there, the music will stop and start at the next waypoint. Now, again, you hear that music to your left side, so you know that's where I have to go. And again, you turn and you walk. And then when you get there at point number 2, the music stops, starts at point number 3, and so on and so forth, from point to point, all the way till you reach your destination without ever having to look at the screen. Now, we co-designed this app directly with users. We have worked and talked with over 120 blind and visually impaired people with the help of several associations around Europe. And we've done many, many workshops. And I'm going to show you now, at least try to show you, a couple of videos of how the application works. Can you see the video on the screen? I hope so.
Yes.
Okay. So let me play. So you see here on the left side, you have the visual, the app, and here I'm walking, and you see as I'm approaching the street, you will hear the sound will move to the right side, and also the sphere will be on the right side. Here is along the way. You should hear it, but I will do that. I will share the link with you, and then you can also experience it. And here you have like one of our blind testers. He's crossing the street, and you will see when he gets to the end of the crossing, you will hear the sound to his left, and you will immediately turn, because that's like very easy to detect. He actually was surprised in this scene because he still tries to confirm, because it was so immediate that you could hear it, that it just even confirms. So let me just go back to the slides now. I'll gladly share the videos with you. They are on our YouTube channel, so you can go there. But I'll share the link. So, but the important point is that we work a lot with users to create the app, to make sure that we would make a meaningful impact in what we create, and not just create something that we feel is right. Also, when we asked users how did this app compare to other apps that they had, they really said, I can't compare. This is a very completely different paradigm of navigation. And we had like our biggest compliment that made us very proud is one user that was the one before. He said it feels a bit like seeing, because the fact that there's always a sound playing is compared to the advantage when you always can see, you have a point of reference where you know that's the direction. So it was very nice that he said that. So there are about 250 million blind and moderate to severe visually impaired people in the world. This number, unfortunately, is growing. And the impact that we want to make for these people is like help them get better physical health, better mental health, and eventually to financial sustainability through more employment and feeling perfectly included members of society. That's our main goal. So now over to the connection to space and implementation problems. Like, this is augmented reality, and for a realistic audio experience, this is really crucial that the app knows exactly where the users are, not like in the photo here where it says that you're in the river. And just to illustrate this, whenever I write GPS, of course, this is just like a term that everyone uses for GNSS or for all satellite navigation systems, but we know, most of us knows this. Here I am on the street, but the GNSS indicates that I'm in the middle of a house. And this is really not true. This happens a lot. And this can't use that to make realistic audio augmented reality. So what we do, and don't pay too much attention to the complicated drawing, but what we do, we just take the satellite data, and I will just show you afterwards a drawing to illustrate this. We take inertial measurements, then measurements of how the phone moves locally, and a bit of machine learning, detecting sidewalks and detecting intersections, and we fuse it together to make GPS better, or GNSS better, and to have a more precise location in the map. And to illustrate this, this is a small village outside of Madrid a few years ago, and I connected my path, and I can tell you I was walking the streets on a very, very precise straight line. So I was here, but this is like very, very wobbly and not really representing reality. So if I use the visual inertial measurements of the phone only, I get this. You can see that the line is very, very straight, but at some point it starts drifting. It does not show me on the road where I know I was, but I know I was walking on a straight line. So in a nutshell, what we do, we take both signals, we take the yellow one and place it on top, aligned with the satellite one. And then we obtain a very, very, very smooth local motion, but at the correct location. And this is more in a nutshell how we get the correct position to implement our augmented reality. Now, very, very briefly, because I'm asked a lot this, why did it start? So I have, as was said in the beginning, I have a PhD in augmented reality. This generated a passion for the concept. I worked in surgery, more specifically in closed chest cardiac surgery. And there, the surgeons have to insert a catheter in the aorta, but with closed chest with very, very poor vision. So we made a system to visualize that catheter inside of the aorta with the closed chest, and suddenly everyone could do this procedure very, very easily. So for me, that was an eye-opener. You can do like these very complicated procedures. Suddenly they are very easy with augmented reality. That was one thing. And then I have a big passion for sound and music. And then I really wanted to work on something that combined both. So that came the idea of the audio augmented reality. And from there came the idea of like helping people navigate, and then we also realized that we could help really have a big impact in the blind community. Now, finally, just to show you where we are and what we will be doing next. So this is something I already showed. We have the outdoor orientation and navigation. We also do this for bike riding. So basically, bike riders also should not look at the screen while they are navigating. So we have the mode where bike riders can also listen and just follow the sounds as they're riding, so increasing their safety. And we also want to adapt this for tourism. It can be for inclusive tourism, but actually everyone can benefit from visiting a city and hearing descriptions around them of the monuments. And we are now working on indoor navigation, where we have a content management system in digital twins, where we can define routes and help people navigate. And we are doing this with the public transports here in Vienna now, in metro stations. And the idea is then to expand this to places with complex environments like airports and many other venues like big hotels, museums, and so on. And that's a glimpse of the future. So thanks a lot, and I'm open for questions. Thank you very much.
Hello, thank you. Thank you, Hugo, for the presentation. It was really inspiring to see how you combined knowledge from surgery, augmented reality, and sound to create such an innovative mobile apps that helps people with visual impairments to navigate their way in their daily life. So this multidisciplinary approach is really interesting. So thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
We have a couple of questions from our audience. So the first question is, what satellite systems does Waveout use? I guess it means that they're using GPS, Galileo.
We take all of them. We use GPS, Galileo, like we use the core location of the phone. So we take all of them. We also run a bunch of experiments with Galileo specifically, looking a bit at the raw signals and how can we profit from the raw Galileo signals and the high accuracy service to have better satellite navigation in the first place. So the better the satellite navigation is, the better the app will be anyhow. So we experiment a little bit with specifically with Galileo.
All right. So talking about the development stage of your product, could you tell us at what stage is your product? Is it commercialized already? Is it something that's available in the market?
Yes, the app is available on the App Store, both for iOS and Android. So for the outdoor, you can just download it and start using it. For the indoor, we are working with partners with the partners on the specific spaces. This is the first big project we're doing now, but we expect to launch soon.
Yeah. Okay. And now about the operational use of the app. The audience is asking, I assume the user can still hear background noise for situational awareness. Is this correct?
Yes, of course. Yeah, yes, of course. So the spatial audio works in any headphone that you want. So you could use closed headphones, but of course, for a blind person, you don't want, or for a bike rider for that matter, you don't want to block the ears. There are a number of open headphones in the market which still have enough quality so that the spatial audio sounds well. So you can just use open headphones and you can still hear everything around you.
All right, and one final question. You mentioned about the bike mode. So could you tell us how does the bike mode differ from the normal mode, especially for people who are visually impaired?
Actually, the difference is not huge. The only main difference on the bike mode is that the way how the sound is presented is adapted for the speed when you are on a bike. The reason for that is that bike riders, of course, they can see, but they would benefit from keeping their eyes on the road and not having to look at the phone. So in that sense, we give them the same type of advantage that we can give a blind person, just listening and following the sound. the concept is exactly the same. So there's not a huge difference.
All right. Thank you. And we have even a suggestion from the audience. Our audience is saying that your innovation could also be used in emergency situations for safe exits. So yeah, she would like to get some commission for this idea. Anyway, great presentation. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much. Yeah,
All right,
thank
great.
you.
So we have heard from our four speakers about how they transformed their ideas into innovative applications for healthcare and accessibility. And some of you here in the audience might be wondering, how do you start your own idea? So very well, we're delighted to have our last speaker, Gerda Kum, to tell us more about funding and networking opportunities available for budding entrepreneurs. So Gerda, she's the market development expert at the European Union Agency for Space Program. She works closely with innovators and startups specializing in space applications, and she helps them to leverage the benefits of the EU space program through various Cassini startup activities. So Gerda, we're very happy to have you here with us. I'm going to bring up your slides.
Thank you very much. So first, during the time when you're bringing up the slides, I would like to do my self-description. I am Northern European, looking gray eyes, light brown hair, and right now wearing a black jacket. So let's get started. So I am working at Market Downstream and Innovation Department of European Union Agency for the Space Program. And we have different type of activities that I would like to introduce to you in order to bring you some ideas how to get started with your solution for people with disability or limited mobility. Next slide, please. So there are mostly three main opportunities that I would like to introduce you today. First one is Cassini activities. This is for individual startups and small and medium enterprises, and it is for European Union citizens. Secondly, I would like to introduce you Horizon Europe calls, which is also a program that allows international participants to take part of the program. And finally, we have Copernicus demonstrator that is specialized on in healthcare segment, and we focus on small demo projects that help different companies to come up with new solutions in healthcare. Next slide, please. So first of all, Cassini, it is European Union Commission's initiative to boost space entrepreneurship. The idea is to make best use of the space data that we have and make solutions that include different type of space data, such as Galileo and Earth observation data. And as a result, we want to enhance the development of new market segments. Next slide, please. And under Cassini, we have activities such as Cassini hackathons, mentoring, Cassini challenges, as well as matchmaking with investors and industrial partnering. The project started in 2021 and will last until 2027. And if you want to hear more about any of those specific activities, I recommend you to go to our website, cassini.eu. Next slide, please. And now I will specifically give you the information about Cassini challenges, because under emerging technologies challenge, right now we also have focus on health. So the idea of this challenge is to encourage companies to use EU space data of Galileo and Copernicus, and let them to propose innovative solutions that will address major societal challenges in focus areas such as health and well-being, citizen safety, security, and connectivity. And you can apply with your idea, with your prototype, or with your product. Next slide, please. And when it comes to Horizon Europe call, this is also opened right now. This requires that different companies and research institutions cooperate together as consortium. And for international partners, we also have one of the topics called designing space-based downstream applications with international partners. Next slide, please. And in those projects, you will need to use also different types of space data, Copernicus data, EGNSS, and the best is if you combine those data, and the idea is to create business-oriented partnerships among European industry and international partners. And on this slide, you have also a list of different international different countries that could participate in this program. Next slide, please. And finally, I would like to introduce you our Copernicus demonstrator. This demonstrator is meant for European as well as international companies in healthcare. And those are small pilot projects that we carry out in order to discover new ways of using space data in healthcare. And the idea of it is to promote and leverage the uptake of space technology in healthcare sector. Next slide, please. And more specifically, this proof of concept is based on needs, gaps, and desires of the company and sector. It should showcase the feasibility of innovative new technology and methods. And it does not need to be completed within the process, during our cooperation, but it has to show or prove some sort of scalability for the final product. Next slide, please. And finally, I would like to also introduce you EUSPA Space Academy, which is a free online website where you can learn more about technical solutions, how to apply space data, and there is also business modules where you can learn how to create your business, and it's very step-by-step organized learning platform. And finally, next slide, please. I would like to thank you all. If you're interested, please subscribe to our newsletter, then you can be up to date with all our activities. And feel free to contact me or write directly to entrepreneurship@euspa.europa.eu. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerda. Do we have any questions from our audience for Gerda? Nope. Well, maybe I can ask you, for some of our audience, let's say coming from non-European countries, are there any opportunities that they can, apply for?
Yes, as I mentioned, the Horizon Europe program includes one of the topics where international partners can take part. And also, I want to actually bring example of healthcare demonstrator. So we're quite open to different solutions, and how we work together is that I give you an example of one of the pharmaceuticals companies that we have been in touch with we basically give some advice from our side, but the company can be international. So its solution can be applied in US, but we give the data about Europe, which is more precise as we are a European Union organization, but we also share data about other parts of the world. So that's how we can work on it internationally as well together.
All right, thank you so much. So thank you so much for sharing information about the variety of opportunities offered by EUSPA. And to our online audience, if you would like to learn more about the criteria for participation, please check out the EUSPA website, which is provided in the chat. All right, so finally, we have come to the end of the webinar. It has been a pleasure to be with all of you during this 1.5 hours. I hope all of you have learned much about the current state of space for global health, the emerging trends, the innovative space-based solutions to improve accessibility, healthcare, and quality of life on Earth, in particular for persons with disabilities. And In particular, I would like to thank all our speakers, Pierre, John, Elena, Hugo, Thomas, and Gerda, for sharing your valuable insights and expertise. And I would also like to thank all of you in the audience for taking the time to attend this webinar. It has been a pleasure to see this level of interest in space for health and disability inclusion, and we look forward to continuing this conversation. So do follow the UNOOSA social media and check out our Space for Persons with Disabilities webpage for updates on the latest developments in our project. And finally, your comment and suggestion would help us to improve our webinar in the future. We would appreciate if you could take a few minutes to complete the feedback form via the link in the chat before you leave. So once again, thank you so much, and we hope to see you again at our next event. Thank you and goodbye.